November 24, 1971, the night before Thanksgiving, a man in a dark suit and tie boards Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He seems like any other business traveler. He calmly orders a bourbon and soda, lights a cigarette, and then passes a note to a flight attendant. That simple piece of paper would launch one of the most baffling mysteries in American history. This man, remembered only as D.B. Cooper, pulled off the most daring unsolved hijacking in American history, and then vanished without a trace. His identity, his fate, and his story remain one of America's greatest unsolved puzzles. Unlike the violent hijackings we might imagine today, Cooper was polite, calm, even charming. Passengers who saw him described him as a quiet gentleman, but behind his neat appearance was a plan that would baffle investigators for decades. The note he passed to the flight attendant claimed he had a bomb in his briefcase. To prove he was serious, he briefly opened it, revealing a mess of wires and red sticks. His demands were clear and specific: $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes to primary and to reserve, and a fuel truck ready to go in Seattle. The airline, fearing for the lives of the 36 passengers on board, had no choice but to comply. When the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper got his money and parachutes. In a surprising act of goodwill, he released all the passengers and some of the crew. He then kept the remaining pilots and a flight attendant on board, ordering them to take off again, this time headed for Mexico City. As the Boeing 727 climbed back into the dark, stormy skies, Cooper gave the pilots a very strange set of instructions. They were to fly low, under 10,000 feet, and slow, under 200 knots, with the landing gear and flaps down. This was a highly unusual and dangerous way to fly a commercial jet. Then, somewhere over the dense, rugged forests of southwestern Washington, Cooper did the unthinkable. He ordered the crew to the cockpit, and alone in the cabin, he lowered the rear air stairs of the jet. In the freezing rain, at 10,000 feet, with $200,000 strapped to his body, Cooper stepped off the stairs and into legend. No one ever saw him again. He simply disappeared into the stormy night. What followed was one of the most extensive and frustrating manhunts in FBI history. The case, codenamed Norjack for Northwest hijacking, saw thousands of interviews and countless dead ends. Investigators created a now famous composite sketch of the suspect, a man with dark hair, dark eyes, and a calm, determined expression. Ground searches combed the vast, unforgiving wilderness of Washington and Oregon, looking for any sign: a parachute, a body, or the money. The FBI had recorded the serial numbers of every single one of the 10,000 $20 bills given to Cooper, hoping they would surface in circulation. For years, nothing did. It was as if the money had vanished with the man. The FBI searched for years, but D.B. Cooper left behind only a few cigarette butts, a black tie, and a tie clip. The first and only major breakthrough came nearly a decade later, in 1980. A young boy digging in the sand along the banks of the Columbia River stumbled upon 3 rotting bundles of cash. It was $5,800 of the ransom money, confirming Cooper had jumped somewhere in that vicinity. But it only deepened the mystery. Where was the rest? And where was Cooper? Over the decades, the FBI investigated more than 800 suspects. None could be definitively tied to the crime. Cooper remained a ghost. One of the most prominent suspects was a man named Richard Floyd McCoy, a Vietnam veteran who pulled off a similar copycat hijacking just a few months later. He even jumped from the back of a 727 with a ransom. But despite the similarities, the FBI eventually ruled him out based on physical descriptions and other evidence. Another suspect, Kenneth Christensen, was a former paratrooper and Northwest Airlines employee. His own brother believed he was Cooper, but there was no hard evidence to link him. Then there was Robert Rackstraw, another Vietnam vet with extensive paratrooping and explosives training. He was a person of interest for years and even seemed to enjoy the attention, but the FBI ultimately concluded he wasn't their man. The list goes on, but each lead turned into a dead end. With no body and no definitive suspect, theories began to swirl. Did he survive the jump? The most common belief held by many FBI agents is that he likely died. The conditions that night were brutal: freezing rain, high winds, and near zero visibility. He jumped into a rugged, mountainous forest wearing only a suit and loafers. The chances of surviving the landing, let alone the harsh wilderness, were slim to none. But what about the other side of the coin? Supporters of the survival theory argue that Cooper was no amateur. He chose a plane with rear stairs, knew the exact flight parameters to make the jump survivable, and may have had an accomplice on the ground. Perhaps he knew the terrain perfectly and simply walked away, blending back into society. The FBI officially closed its active investigation in 2016, leaving the case unsolved. Did Cooper die a lonely death in the wilderness? Or did he slip away, cash in hand, to live quietly among us? The truth remains locked in the night sky of 1971. Whether he lived or died, D.B. Cooper instantly became an American folk legend. He was transformed from a criminal into a symbol of rebellion, a mysterious outlaw who beat the system and got away with it. His story has been told and retold in countless books, documentaries, TV shows like Loki, and even songs. Small towns near the jump zone hold annual festivals in his honor, from wild conspiracy theories to mainstream pop culture. Cooper became more than a hijacker. He became a symbol of mystery, of adventure, and of one of America's most tantalizing unsolved secrets. More than 50 years later, the mystery of D.B. Cooper endures. No parachute was ever found, no definitive body was ever recovered, and aside from that small bundle of cash found by a boy in 1980, the rest of the ransom money has never been seen again. The man who called himself Dan Cooper remains a question mark in the sky, a phantom who leaped into a storm and vanished into legend. Perhaps someday a new piece of evidence will surface, a deathbed confession will be made, or a hiker will stumble upon a skeleton and a rotten parachute. But until then, the name D.B. Cooper will echo forever in American folklore. Thanks for watching. If you love diving into historical mysteries like this one, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories. We'll see you in the next video.